how about Bergson's élan vital? Is this related to randomness, perhaps?
Well, I think it is. I think it is. It's exactly, you are really, your intuition, I don't know if you have read Bergson, but your intuition is just wonderful. Because what is fighting Bergson is pure determinism. Because he said that time is always openness. And exactly, and élan vital, that doesn't mean that things are determined. That means that every time, that for him, organic life, for him it's limited to organic life. Mm-hmm. But in fact, for me, it's not limited to organic life. I will extend it like the way Whitehead did, actually.
To the entire universe.
Exactly. Oh. The way Whitehead did, that's the reason why people say Whitehead is panpsychic.
Panpsychic.
Yeah,
I see.
But people are wrong because they don't understand panpsychic the right way. They think when we say, because I'm a panpsychist, but
I sympathize also.
Yeah, but when we think about panpsychism, people think about panpsychism as there is awareness inside the atoms, etc. It doesn't mean that. We could. It depends what.
But in cells, perhaps.
It depends what we say. But it is just the idea that in everything that looks passive, so that looks determined from the outside, there is in fact deep inside, or we say inside, but it's not even inside, an active part. So that, and this active part is actually random. Is the chaos, the chaos part, the creativity part. Mm-hmm. You know. And so for Bergson, at least on the stage of organism, because he was obsessed, it's 19th century, the idea of biology, people were obsessed by that, etc. Like the same way, like in the beginning of the 20th century, they became again obsessed with physics because Einstein and
relativity theory shocked everybody.
Exactly. This time, like the obsession, people were dreaming mostly. In the history of science, we see that about biology, and they were even Hegel at the time. He talked about universality as being organic universality, and even the idea of ideas, the idea of synthesis. For him, he's obsessed by organism. He say the mind is sleeping inside nature, inert nature, and nature is awaking itself, like if it was tickled with contradictions at first, and contradictions make things more complex, more aware.
The Geist is awakening through
synthesis.
Contradictions.
Exactly, and he's obsessed with organism, like everybody was obsessed with organism. Teilhard de Chardin and Bergson.
Well, me too, actually, in metabiology.
Yes, of course. It's except that now it's like everything will be related, even physics, mathematics, or organism. At the time, people thought, everything is about biology. Well, now it seems like there is a convergence.
Well, software seems to be a unifying principle. Information seems to be a unifying principle.
Yeah, it's what you were saying the other day. So to come back with Bergson, l'élan vital, and vital, I don't know how you say that in English, actually. Maybe there is a translation, I don't know. In French, at least, it's l'élan vital.
Yeah, I don't know what to say in
l'élan
English.
Vital, if you
Shaw would say it in English. What did he call it? George Bernard Shaw had seen the publication of Darwin's book on the evolution of species, and I think he read Bergson, and he has a play that can't be staged practically, called Back to Methuselah, which is something like, 200,000 years of human evolution. It's a science fiction play in a way. It would take, 6 hours to put on stage. And he has always enormous prefaces, didactic prefaces explaining his ideas. And he gives a summary of the way he sees evolution and Bergson. And I think I don't think he says élan vital. I don't know what he calls it.
Because élan vital, the fact that Bergson used élan is very interesting. Because élan, that means it's something that you launch, but you don't know where it goes. It's not like something that could be predetermined. It's an élan. It's just a push
Yes.
And it takes a direction, but it's just a direction that is here to go beyond, because it's the idea to go beyond with these.
To go beyond. Vital force, I don't know what it is in English, but Shaw also has a play called Man and Superman, which sometimes the prefaces or the afterwords are longer than the play, and
but you know,
he's talking about these issues because, as you say, everybody at the time was thinking about organisms and biology.
Yeah, exactly.
Bergson, Darwin,
everybody was talking
George
about
Bernard Shaw, the playwright.
Exactly. Everybody thought that it's interesting in the history of science that at a certain time there is a discipline, a certain science that becomes the criterion of the other science. And in the 19th century, clearly that was biology. That was like in the middle. Everybody thought that one moment,
philosophy, for example.
Exactly. Nature philosophy in Germany, and exactly.
Yeah. Well, I found a book once in a used bookstore, a book from not that many years after Newton. I could purchase it for nothing because the child of the owner had, with a red crayon, written on it. But the book was for aristocrats, for ladies and gentlemen, to do experiments illustrating Newtonian physics. At that time, it was fashionable to do things like with a prism, for example, to see colors like Newton had done. And the illustrations are wonderful because you see the person performing. The experimental equipment could be contemporary, but the person doing the experiment is wearing the clothes that an aristocrat would wear in the year 1700 something. You know? So that was very fashionable among ladies and gentlemen to be concerned with those ideas of that period. So as you say, every period, I don't know what our period is. Maybe it's artificial intelligence is going to be the new...
I think artificial intelligence, in a way, unfortunately, is becoming some kind of an ideal that I would call an anti-ideal anyway, but this becoming some kind of an ideal, something that becomes a model of what is supposed to be intelligence in itself. But that's another subject, I think.
Yeah, at one point there were mechanical models maybe of how the brain might work, then telephone exchange was a model for what the brain was like, the analogy used to be made. Then the next step would be computers were used as an analogy for how the brain is. And it keeps getting more sophisticated, the models that we
Do you remember when I was saying that I thought that there was some kind of a... I know that too much negativity in those words, and too much negativity in the mind of people, at least of random people, if I can say, about randomness. I think we have to be careful about words. That's the reason why I'm in my work, I was, with this idea of chaos, like positive randomness, like chaos being...
Creative randomness.
Exactly, creative randomness. That's when I use chaos with a K, as I said, not when it became disorder, because when you read chaos with the Latin root, it be chaos, like written this way. It means disorder, so like negative chaos.
Well, azar in Spanish, I think, has a negative connotation. It means bad luck.
Exactly. That's the same in French. And so I wanted just at first to be funny, but I think it's not only funny. I'd say maybe we could call what we call order. We could call it de-chaos. De-chaos is orders. Like you're losing chaos. That is the positive thing.
Sounds bad.
And when you're losing it, it becomes some kind of an order. But this order has to always leave the room for a new order or something.
You don't want too much order, it becomes a prison.
Exactly.
And also, if it's an artistic work, it becomes boring.
Exactly. In order, sometimes I compare order like de-chaos in my vocabulary, like a photography. You have reality, and you take a photography, it doesn't move anymore. It's just boom, what it is, with all the information in a limited screen, or like there.
Yes.
And it's like that. And the word is not a photography. It's just It's not like that, you know. And so Descartes, but if there hasn't been chaos, you couldn't have the chaos, you couldn't have the order. So the order, the problem with dictatorship and these kind of things, it's when an order forget that its origin and what goes beyond it, even what justifies it as an order, is actually chaos. But when it forgets that, it becomes order for order. And it's at that time there is a risk of dogmatism.
Yeah, well, I don't think we want to say that order is bad and randomness is good, because they need each other. It's like yin and yang.
Okay.
It's like Shiva has the dance of destruction and creation. They're sort of complementary aspects of the same thing. So
it's also because we need those photographs in order to live, to be practical. Because as we say, you can't absorb the real. But
too much information.
Exactly. So that's complementary. But we need to know what is the use of those realities we accept, we actually access, in order to not take them for what they are not. So my message will be, don't forget about transcendence, about chaos.
Don't forget about transcendence. Yeah, well...
So about infinity. And mathematics with infinity reminds us, and I think it's what is great with Cantor in a way, it just reminds us about transcendence through infinity.
Well, Cantor is incredibly imaginative. You know, there's that phrase of Grothendieck. The English version is as if summoned from the void. Comme appelé du néant, is that it in French?
The void or the emptiness or the
yes.
Void, yeah? Le vide.
Le vide. It would be le vide
void,
en français, n'est-ce pas? Okay, so Cantor just imagines these larger and larger infinities, and he creates this new reality out of his imagination. So I think he said the essence of mathematics resides in its freedom, in the freedom to create.
And that's the real. That's not abstract, in my opinion, as the beginning. It's actually the real.
Yeah, for some people, Cantor's infinite cardinals and ordinals are more real than the messy world that is in the newspapers and on TV programs with the news.
I think it is.
Well, it depends.
Doesn't mean it's more useful.
For Alain
it's less
Badiou,
useful.
peut-être.
No. It's less practical. It's less practical. So it's less political. It's less we could say everything. Less with representation, with less, but it is more real.
You're saying it's not opinion. It's truth.
Exactly. When I'm saying the
Episteme,
real, I mean
doxa.
it's truth.
Yes.
Exactly. It's not relative truth, but it's the truth.
Well, yes, but there's a problem that Cantor gets into contradictions with his ideas. Maybe that's the fun part. Maybe any really deep idea has to have paradoxes and contradictions, or it's a bore.
Of course, because every great idea, the closer it gets to the real, the further it gets from causality and from coherence. And at one point, you can't come back.
Okay, so then paradox, I think Leibniz says this somewhere. He says it in French. I won't try to remember it in French.
He actually wrote in French.
Yes, well, and in Latin also.
In Latin, of course, Latin and French.
Yeah.
La modédologie first in French. And in Latin.
Right, but the Discours de métaphysique, which is my favorite
Latin first,
document, fortunately is in French, because I have no Latin, but I have some French. Anyway, he does say that il n'y a aucun paradoxe sans utilité, quelque chose comme ça. And I think he's right.
I think he is. And maybe we can finish our conversation with this wonderful sentence by Leibniz, which is one of the authors we share the love for.
We do indeed.
Thank you, Gregory. That was wonderful.
Thank you, Raphaël.